as I will forever be known to that as. And I just like to, most of you here know me. For those who don't know me, I actually have a double PhD in both rocket surgery and brain science. Kind of a big deal, but just totally don't worry about it. So, I was trying to think if I wanted to do a speech or not, because I'm not really good at speeches, because I tend to get all stuttery and all nervous and I panic and eventually I'm just laying out back crying. So we don't want that yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a story. And the story is about my dad and his emphysema. And those people here who are really clever, spoiler alert, I mean, he lived. Obviously that's why we're here, right? But we didn't always know it was going to be that way. I was a young child when my dad was diagnosed with emphysema. And some of you will still argue I'm a young child, but, well, you might be right. I didn't know what it meant. I asked my dad and he said, "Don't worry, it's gonna be okay." I thought, okay, well, fair enough. Time passes. It's a couple years later, and I'm noticing something about my manservant, and he's getting a bit slower. Because usually you can get like 20 years out of a car. So 20 years out of Uncle Ted is pretty good. But he was starting to slow down, and it was a busy house. I mean, I have needs. They're pretty heavy. There was also my brother and then foster children. So there was a lot of stuff that my dad needed to do. And I mean, he started doing it in an inconsistent manner. We had to write some letters of reprimand, but yeah. But he kept doing it, and time passed. And then he started slowing down a lot more. And it was no longer, okay, well you can't do it today. How about tomorrow? It was, I can't do it, son. And it was bad because as he was slowing down, neither Jeff or I were really speeding up. And the same amount of work was still there, so it was immediately a problem. But we kind of rallied a bit and pulled together, and it was okay for a time. And then one day it wasn't okay, and he couldn't breathe. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, we'll get you some oxygen. So he had a tank he used to have it on his shoulder. And part of me loved that tank because he could breathe, and he was still going, but part of me hated it because it meant the disease was winning. But, that's what he needed, so it was okay. Time passes. It's not just when he's working out now, it's all the time, and he's always on oxygen. When he has to go out, it's the tank at full capacity. When he's at home, he's laying in bed with the oxygen going to his nose. But it's okay because he's still there. I still have a dad. And everyone in the family was doing their best, but we had a couple of foster children who thought, this isn't a life support system. This is a tool for bargaining, and a tool for getting what I want. And some of them had to be spoken to quite firmly. There was one in particular who thought it'd be a great idea to unplug it while my dad was sleeping, which is not good, because no oxygen, no getting up. So, the immediate reaction was to bolt upstairs, kick down the door, grab the offending child by the face, and out the window. But I didn't do that. But if I had done that, it wouldn't have been difficult, because there's plenty of places to hide the body. There's a garden, there's a greenhouse, there's a pool and push. But yeah, totally didn't do that. But it's kind of funny, Mom, how well those tomatoes grow, yeah? Food for thought, right? Time passes. It's almost Christmas now. And Christmas is a great time, but my dad doesn't really feel comfortable driving anymore because, can't breathe. So we go Christmas shopping, and we get everything, and it's nice and quick, and he's got his wheelchair, and we're pushing around, and everything's fine, and we get home. And he's really tired by the time we get home, and by the time I get him upstairs, we, get him into bed and put down the presents, and he's asleep before he can even wrap them or anything. He looked really small in the bed, like an old man. And at that point, I promised that I would give anything to keep him alive. Time passes. We met a doctor. I won't say what his actual name was because he was not one of our friends. We called him Dr. Death because he said that it's going to be a year or maybe 2. And that's it. We're not very friendly to him at the dinner table, saying, oh, stupid asshole, doesn't know anything. But inside, we knew that it couldn't go on for much longer. We met another doctor. But this doctor was one of our friends, Dr. Walker. He said that maybe it wasn't going to be over, and that maybe he'd get a transplant. He said it wouldn't be easy, but if Dad was willing to, he'd recommend him. And for that act and that action alone, that's why he's in every single one of our prayers, every night, no exceptions. That passes. My dad does great. He's always been one of the strongest people I've ever known. And he loses the weight, he does all of his tests, everything's great. Just no lung. We wait on the waiting list, and we get a couple calls. They're called dry runs, which is odd, considering the amount of tears on our face when we were told the lung wasn't good. But, you know, we did what we could. He's getting pretty weak at this point. We don't know how much longer we can hold out, but, you know, we do what we can. Get him the Chinese food, the fish and chips, all of his dear friends. So time passes, and it's death. But not for us. I've never known his name, the lung donor. I knew he was a donor. They think he was fairly young, fairly healthy, fairly fit. But I never had, you know, a family to thank. So he's also in our prayers. My parents get the call, and they get a helicopter over. But there's only room for the two of them, so myself, Jeff, and Dylan have to head over on the ferry. It seemed like a long ride, but I suspect it was the same 2 hours. I somehow managed to get us through Vancouver traffic without killing any number of annoying, obnoxious drivers talking on their cell phones and texting as I'm trying to get to the hospital where my father may or may not be dying. But we get there, and time passes. It's been a long time. It was maybe 8 hours. 8 hours isn't a long time if you're working, but if you're sitting in a waiting room with mom, trying not to cry, it's a pretty long time. The doctor said that, you know, it's a 4-hour procedure. So at 8, we started to panic a bit. And at 8.5, we started to rock back and forth slightly. Thankfully, Jeff had taken Dylan out of the room at that point, so we didn't have to murder him for pacing back and forth. And then, suddenly, it was time. And he survived. We didn't get to see him right away. Well, I didn't get to see him right away. Something about not being his spouse, I don't know, whatever. I tried to explain I had the papers to prove I owned him, but, I mean, they just didn't listen to me, which sucked. He looks really small in bed. But not like before. Before, he was laying in bed and he looked like a defeated old man, but now it's more like a child, just waiting to grow up and be strong. He's got like 15 machines around him, and it's kind of like one of those scenes from The Matrix where there's a little person here, and there's a shit everywhere doing everything they need. But it's okay, because he's gonna be okay. Time passes. His recovery is incredible. Everyone tells me how, you know, he's above and beyond anything they ever expected. And then, I mean, I could have told them this was like top of the line Uncle Ted I got. Like one of the better servants I've ever known. From there, his recovery was incredibly quick. At first, it was, you know, daily visits in the transplant clinic, but then it was, you know, 1 month, and then 2 months, and then 6 months, and everything was great. His recovery was incredibly quick. In closing, I'd like to take us to the beer real quick. Dad, when you're at your worst, I promise that I'd give anything to keep you alive. Do you know what's changed since then? No. Nothing? I love you, Dad. And Mom. And everyone here tonight, and that's not just the beer talking. Without your support, we wouldn't have made it here. So, thank you. Thanks.
Hey, Maddie, thank you so much. That was outstanding.
Same time next year.
Yeah, Al, did you start that? You started. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to shut her down now as far as speeches, unless anybody is burning to say something. Though following Matthew, I think maybe a tad difficult. We're going to give the band a couple minutes to set up, and then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to party down. So thank you all for being here.